Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Roseville Wrecking Ball. The Roseville Wrecking Ball.
Joshua Shrum. He is a very talented steward, very knowledgeable.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. This is one of those podcasts where I listen to every episode. I love what he's putting out there.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. Josh Shrum.
Parcels of knowledge. Does a fantastic job with that podcast.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. He is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God. We need Article 8 scholars right now.
Tune into the Parcels of Knowledge podcast while you're on the route. That's the mailman's playbook, brother.
All right, welcome to Parcels of Knowledge, the podcast dedicated to delivering knowledge to the city letter carrier with your host, the Roseville Wrecking Ball. Today we have an interesting guest here for Saturdays with Shrum. Would you like to introduce yourself for the record?
My name is John Cruz, president of Branch 41, Brooklyn, Staten Island Merge.
Okay, and I understand you're running for a national position. What would that be?
I'm running for a National Trustee.
Okay, perfect. We got some listeners sent you questions for your candidacy, and we're just going to go right through, and I imagine this will be a short one. Let's see how it goes. What sets you apart from the other trustees?
Nothing sets me apart. I'm just an average kid from Brooklyn. That's all I am. I'm no different than no one else.
Okay. All right. What was the most challenging decision you have ever had to make as a branch president?
When I was put up for removal for sanctioning a strike.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. In March of 2020 was my first year. I just got elected. January 2020 was my first. January 1st, 2020 was my first day as president of Branch 41. March of 2020, we were going through the pandemic, which was new to us. And I went to one of my stations to visit a station, and one thing led to another. And my carriers didn't want to go inside, so I stood out there with them. We stood in solidarity out there. About 48 carriers were put up for removal, including myself. We were all put up for removal for sanction of strike. We stood outside until they came and cleaned the post office. And it was a lot more history to that because my national business agent let me down. When the process was going through and I was going through the grievance process, he got in contact with me at that time, and he told me to write a letter of apology to the post office and step down as president, and everything will go away. And I said, absolutely not. I said, I'd rather go in front of an arbitrator. And I waited 369 days to go in front of an arbitrator. And we won, and we were successful.
That's good. That's good to hear you were successful, of course. I would hope so, since you're still around.
Yeah, I'm. When I turned down the offer, didn't realize at that time I put my family in danger. I was going to lose everything. But at the end of the day, I said, I'm standing here with my membership, and I'm not going to let my membership down. And that's what I did.
Yeah, that's very admirable. Now, do you have a lot of grievance handling experience? And if so, can you tell me your favorite types of grievances to take part in?
Well, I do have a lot of grievance handling experience. Prior to me becoming, in 2011, my president at that time, he called me up to the branch and asked me to be a backup Formula A rep. I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't even know what a Formula A rep was at that time. I was just a shop steward. And my first grievance took me 8 hours to prepare. That was my first grievance. And from 2011 to 2014, I was the backup Formula A rep. And then in Just sometime in 2014, I became the chief steward. I handled 37 stations by myself.
Wow.
And so from there, from 2014 to 2017, when I became executive vice president, I was the chief steward.
That's pretty
So,
cool.
yeah. So I do enjoy. I'm still involved in grievances. That's my passion. I don't have a preference, to be honest with you. I just, if you give me something, I'll put, whatever dedication I have to it. It's just what I do. I still do arbitration. I'm a hands-on president. I'm not the one that sits back and sends everyone to do everything. Sometimes my guys tell me, why don't I sit down and relax for a little bit? But that's not my style.
Okay. What's your favorite postal podcast?
Um, I never listened to podcasts. I never listened to podcasts until my guys, some of my Formula A guys started telling me to listen to Corey Walton. I listened to Corey Walton for a while. Um, then I started listening to, of course, my guy Richie Ray. I listened to him. I listened to a few of your podcasts. So to be honest, I don't have a favorite. I just listen, just to listen, and I listen to a lot of your stuff. Your Article 8s are just great. I do listen to a lot of your Article 8 stuff. I do think they're great, and I do tell my guys to listen to a lot of your stuff.
Well,
But
Richie Ray is pretty cool.
no, Richie Ray is great. All of you guys, to be honest with you, what you guys are doing, and I'm not saying it because I'm here with you, what all of you guys are doing, just in general, putting information out there, helping the membership, giving something that we, especially myself, I never had that. I had to learn the hard way.
Yep.
You guys are doing a great job. So in all reality, all of you guys are great.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
You know.
Do you have any specific plans to implement as trustee?
Well, specific plans. Well, we want to see the finances, of course, like everybody else wants to see the finances. And if there's anything that has to be shut off the top, where there's money being spent that it shouldn't be spent, of course, we're gonna try to implement that, and get things done in the right way. We won't have bodyguards for sure on the payroll. So that's one of the things we won't have.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, but I, in, and and I'm sorry that I'm going to say this, but we have 290,000 letter carriers. Not every letter carrier is going to agree with you, and that's okay. But if you treat every letter carrier fairly, listen to them, and respect them, those 290 letter carriers will be your bodyguards, free of charge.
Yeah, I agree. Now, what resolutions, if any, has your branch put forward for the Los Angeles convention?
We don't have no resolutions that we're putting forward. We don't have none. Yeah, we don't.
The NLRA has a union members' bill of rights. The NELC has a member bill of rights that mirrors the NLRA. As a branch president, what is your role in protecting your members' rights to do things like free speech and free assembly?
Well, my members speak, and if I'm correct, if I understand the question, is like, if my members have the right to speak and say what they want to say, do I ever retaliate against them? No, I don't.
Okay.
My membership speaks freely. I have a lot of great guys that speak how they speak, and I listen to them, and we talk, but we never disrespect each other. And I'm going to tell you why. When I was coming up the ranks, it was a little older school generation, when I was coming up the ranks, and I saw the way business was done. And what I mean by business is done is like, shut up, don't say nothing, be quiet. That's the way it was. So as time went on, and I see it being done, I said, why? What is the purpose of this if we're telling a member that they can't say nothing and speak? Let them say what they have to say. It doesn't mean we always have to agree, but we have to listen. We always have to listen to each other no matter what. So, and I took that into consideration. It's just like when I was a chief steward, I handled 37 stations by myself. That wasn't easy as a chief steward. So when I became president, I created the Formal A positions, and I have 3 full-time Formal A guys on 613, 40 hours a week, taking care of Brooklyn. And I have 1 in Staten Island. I have 1 full-time guy on 613 taking care of Staten Island. So, and I have also backups. I also do have, I have a total of, between Staten Island and Brooklyn, I have a total of 4 more backups that I could just activate them as, and, I was able to work that out. I was able to get that, and I don't have no problems. I even have a pre-arb. I even created just recently, I recently created a pre-arb team that they go in, sit with labor, and try to pre-arb cases that are just sitting on the docket. We were backed up 260 grievances pending arbitration.
Yeah.
When I created this team, and now we're down. So just recently, it's just a little bit under 100 right now. We had numerous guys sitting at home waiting for a pending arbitration. And now, since I created this team, these guys are back to work, back pay, they happy, and it's moving forward.
That's good. Now, stewards and branch officers around the country are expected to put in work on their days off and after hours to complete grievances to do branch work. As a branch leader, what is your view on what they would refer to as wage theft, and what obligation does the NALC have to ensure people are paid for their work?
Well, if any steward is working off the clock, first, we shouldn't be working off the clock, especially as doing handling grievance work. My guys, a lot of my guys work, and I could say that I know of 90% of my guys do everything on the clock. Is rare if I get 1 or 2 guys that do something off the clock, and if it's done off the clock, we do handle it through the grievance process.
Now, do you New York branches see each other as like competition or competitive rivalry, or are you guys one big family over there, like with David Grosskopf?
I'm going to speak the truth, and I'm not going to lie about this. I am the what they call the stepchild of this region, because since I don't see what they see, a lot of the and I hate to say it, and I don't care. The good old boys see it one way, I see it another way, and a lot of the leaders don't talk to me because of that. So
yeah, I could see that.
I'm fine. I'm fine where I'm at. I stand my ground, and I go to these rap sessions. I go here, I go there, and I walk in the room and I'm the most liked one. So
Okay. How should the union respond when financial losses are used as an excuse to cut workers but not management costs? I think they're referring to, when the fact that the Postal Service is not reducing their management staff, but they're attempting to reduce carriers.
I've always had a problem. I've always had a problem with management just continue to make 204Bs, supervisors constantly, and they say we're short on staff. But the same people that were in the staff are the same people that you convert over, create 204B positions. They go on details constantly. I personally think, and this is just my opinion, before you go into management, you should have at least 5 years of experience. If you're a letter carrier or whatever craft you are, you should have at least 5 years under your belt before you move up to the next ladder. That's what I personally think, because right away they convert them over, and because they don't want to deliver mail. Okay, none of them want to deliver mail, and and the first thing they say to you, I used to be a letter carrier. I was a letter carrier too, but not for 2 years. I've been on the job since 1993, so I've been around a long time. So
Yeah.
just I personally think that before you convert them over, and they basically tell us, and I've been at labor management meetings, they tell us you can't tell us what to do. You're absolutely right. I think this is a national problem, and I think national should do something about this at their level. Again, this is my opinion, and this is just my opinion only.
Yeah.
Right? I think national should get involved in that, and before we're talking about letter carriers. I'm not talking about the other craft right now. I'm talking about before letter carriers go into 204, they should at least have 5 years of experience on the job.
I think they should have a comprehension test for the contract.
Well,
Yeah.
well, years ago when a supervisor was converted, when a 204B was going, they went into a 28-week program. And I'm not telling you that I agreed with them back then, even though back then, but they had more common sense than what we have now.
Yeah, when they're a CCA, they go to management. They're not going to know the contract. They're just going to violate because they don't even know they're violating it.
Yeah, they don't. So it's like that 28-week program went right out the door. And then hey, I'm a supervisor. I'm a level 17. Okay.
Yeah,
That's why we're spending so much money on grievances.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Now, do you agree with reducing management staff numbers?
Of course. Because who's going to do the job? Management is not going to deliver the mail. We're going to deliver the mail. Do we really need management to tell us what to do every day? Do you need a state for us? I'm going to tell you us. I don't know how it works in other parts of the country. We have a station manager. We have a morning supervisor. We got a late start supervisor, which is an 8 o'clock supervisor. We got a night supervisor, and then we got another supervisor. So you got 4 supervisors and a manager running the workroom floor. Then you got an area manager. Then you got a postmaster. So you got seven authorities running the workroom floor. Then there's no communication between the four supervisors. Then the carrier gets written up because you failed to follow instructions. No, but I told the other supervisor this. I told the other supervisor this. And then, you got Mo, Larry, and Curly. They don't know what they're doing.
That's funny you mentioned they don't communicate, because when I turn in at 96 for 2 hours and I come back at 10, they act very surprised, like as if it was never communicated. It's ridiculous. Yeah,
it is. It really is.
What is your side of the story regarding the Branch 70 versus Michael Rivera controversy? I must admit that censoring a dues-paying member bothers me to my core. Feels exactly like Renfro or Good Old Boys modus operandi, unless there is overwhelming evidence of egregious misconduct.
Well, no, I really haven't gotten involved in this Branch 70 thing. I do see some stuff on social media here. Michael Rivera. I don't know Michael Rivera. I don't have nothing against Michael Rivera. I saw Ricardo at the COP. I don't discuss none of this with no one. I really don't get involved in none of this stuff. But to me, there's 3 sides to stories: your story, his story, and the truth. I honestly think this is the way I look at things. We should all come together and try to fix this or fix whatever the issue is before it escalated. That's just my opinion. Okay. Because that's just the way I look at things. Because with every action comes a reaction. You understand? So let's look at everything. Let's sit down. Let's talk. We don't have to agree. It's okay for us not to agree, but let's talk this out and let's figure this all out. That's just the way I am. I've always been like that. I like to discuss things, whether you're upset at me, I'm upset at you. But one thing that we have to do, we have to communicate to figure this out. So my opinion on this Michael Rivera thing, I didn't get involved in it. I still haven't, really looked at it, and I don't discuss it with nobody. This is the first time someone's asking me about it.
Yeah. I mean, you got a couple spicy questions left. We're actually pretty far down. We are steamrolling right through. But not all of them are spicy. But the next one is, Someone must know what Renfro's doing on his floor, and our other employees blocked from his floor. How much is the remodeling costing? Is he putting a safe room? Why is two bodyguards traveling with him? It's funny you mentioned that earlier. Were duties taken from the vice president and the executive vice president and given to Dan Toth?
Well, the bodyguards, I tell you because I see them everywhere. I saw them just recently in Puerto Rico. They had a young lady and an older gentleman there as their bodyguards. I don't know what that payroll is, but I'm sure it's expensive because if they're traveling, you have to pay for their hotel, you have to pay for their traveling expenses and their salary. So I'm sure it's expensive. I'm sure it's expensive. Number two, I did hear about a remodel. Again, this is all just here. He said, here said, she said. I did hear about a remodel on the 8th floor that he spent over $1 million on the remodeling on the 8th floor. Have I looked into it? No, I haven't. This is all just stuff that's just being said. That's just I've heard. I did see Paul Barner this weekend. This past weekend at the Committees of Presidents meeting. Ironic, he actually came over to me and said hi. So I don't know what his duties are. And as we all know, James Henry, his duties were taken away from him, and I just don't understand why his duties were taken away from him. Because I look at it like this. If you're an elected official, whether I like you or don't like you, you have a responsibility. Go handle your responsibility. Go do your job. I'm not going to take nothing away from you because that's just the bottom line. Because I'm not suffering by taking something away from you. My membership is suffering by taking something away, by me taking him away from you. Because, and again, it's just, I don't say this because I'm part of the James Slate Henry, and I don't, when I met James Henry at the Formula A and beyond for the first time, his knowledge is just something that we need. His knowledge is powerful. His experience, his arbitration cases alone speak for himself. And our membership, sends us somewhere to learn this for we could adapt it and we could use it for them. And by taking it away from him, I think that was just a full, because look at it, at the end of the day, whether it's James Henry, whether it's Mike Carafe, whether it's the guy that works at the corner store that's going to run for president, whoever runs for president, whether someone determines to run for a position, that is their right to run for any position as long as they're a member and in good standards, right or wrong. I'm just saying, you cannot tell no one that they cannot run for a position in office. My election just recently came through. My election just recently in October of 2025, right? Yeah. We ran unopposed. This is the first time that we ran unopposed in since 2012. This is the first time that we ran unopposed. Every 3 years there was an election, whatever position it was. My membership put me back in and put my team back in because they believed that we were doing the right thing. But it's an open door. I will never tell nobody, and I never tell nobody, if you decide to run against us, you're going to be ostracized. No, I won't do that, because there is people at my branch meeting that have ran against my slate, and I still treat them the same way. I won't mistreat no one. So if anyone wants to run for the position, they're entitled to run for the position. So by you taking away his duties, you gave him more ammunition.
Yep. Just like Renfro did with those RAAs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he fired 2 RAAs for announcing that they were running for MBA. But there's another RAA that announced, but he didn't fire him.
Is that which one are you referring to? The
Region 14.
Okay.
Yeah. He didn't fire him.
That's interesting. It's probably related. Maybe are they related to the CLC?
No, they're not related to the CLC.
So that's probably the reason why, I imagine. That's
Talk
not,
about
yeah.
discrimination.
Yeah, that's not cool.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's see. Hi, John. I'm a city carrier in Guam, and it's very difficult for us to get the best training or to be considered for events like COP or other trainings. We're basically ignored by the NALC. Every year, we get promises that no one delivers. Will the CLC commit to coming out here before convention to campaign? If not, the whole slate, at least Corey and James, we really need our voices to be heard out here.
Oh, I will bring this up to James for sure. I've never been to Guam, so it's kind of interesting. I would definitely push for this. I would definitely push for this because everybody's voice should be heard. So
Yeah, I feel like Puerto
yeah,
Rico's kind of in the same boat, aren't they?
yes, they are.
Yeah, that's,
It's funny that you talk about Puerto Rico. My background is from Puerto Rico. My parents are from Puerto Rico. And I was assigned to I've been doing arbitration cases in Puerto Rico, and I've been doing arbitration cases, helping out Branch 869 a lot. And there was an incident that occurred on March 26th in Washington, D.C., with all the branch presidents from Region 15. And we got into a shouting match. Myself and the president of Puerto Rico got into a shouting match with Brian and a few other the branch presidents, and now they took Puerto Rico away from me, and I'm no longer allowed to go to Puerto Rico to do arbitration cases.
no, that's crazy.
Yeah, so I got punished.
I get calls from Puerto Rico sometimes. That's why I know they're in the same camp, but sometimes it's hard to communicate because I know I don't know Spanish very well or Puerto Rican or I'm not sure. I don't know any other languages, to be honest. So, like, sometimes they have to have a translator on the line with me.
But Branch 869 has a great president. Branch 826 has a great president. They're both two great presidents. They just cover Puerto Rico covers a lot of territory. It really is. Like you're on one side of the island. It could take you 2 hours, 2.5 hours to get to another side of the island easily.
Oh, is it that big?
Yeah, it's big.
Wow.
It's big.
Yeah.
My family is from the west coast of Puerto Rico, and that's when I was going for arbitration. That's where I stay. I stay at home because my mom has a home there, so I stay there. And I was traveling every day to San Juan back and forth, and that was at least an hour and a half to an hour 45 minutes. So that's the way I do it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay.
Now, if elected and if Cariff is president, I think they're making an assumption here. Would you be willing to work with Cariff to represent the members of the NALC?
If he's the leader, they say there's a saying that we always go by. You don't have to like the man in the chair, but you have to respect the chair. So if I have to work with him, I have to work with him. That's not a problem. But at the end of the day, I don't look at it as working for him. I look at it as working for the membership. Because at the end of the day, we work for the membership.
Yeah, absolutely. This question is going to be a little redundant, but it also has the reason why I'm going to ask it anyway is because it has another part to it that wasn't talked about yet. So I'm just going to go through the whole question and feel free if you feel like you answered part of it. You don't have to answer it again, but is it true that candidates on the CLC slate were required to contribute $10,000 to be included? Why should members trust the CLC slate when many of its candidates remain silent while Chairman Ricardo Guzman brought Article 10 charges against brother Mike Rivera and had him unjustly suspended? Do you believe more should have been done at that time?
Okay. It's not, well, we know for every election you got to spend money, right? So, as we all know, the CLC is getting donations. The CLC is spending their guys are spending their own money traveling the country to going back and forth. Now, when election time comes, we have to have our personal money for elections. For campaigning, for mailing. What it costs, I think it's gonna run about maybe anywhere between $8,000 to $10,000 per person. So when the time comes, we have to have that money. So it's not like if we had to put in $10,000 to be part of the CLC, we're just gonna have to have that money when the time comes for election. I didn't the second part with Ricardo.
Yeah.
What was it? I'm sorry, repeat.
Let me see. Essentially, they were asking about, in terms of the money that you guys have paid or will be paying, why should they trust them with it, considering the Ricardo incident recently? And they also said, do you think more should have been done at the time? And I think you touched on that. If I'm not mistaken, you did mention that you think that, because of the three different stories that, maybe they should have sat down together.
Yeah, so I did touch on that. And Ricardo, to me and to the CLC, and just in general from what I've seen personally, okay, this doesn't have nothing to do with the Michael Rivera situation. Ricardo has always been an honest guy, straightforward guy. And you will call Ricardo tomorrow and ask him for transparency with the money. They're not hiding nothing. They really are not hiding nothing. And again, I would touch a little bit on the Michael Rivera situation. The way I feel, again, I would have did it a little bit more different. That's my personal opinion. I would have did a little bit more different. Because everyone deserves a day in court. Everyone does deserve a day in court. Again, I have nothing against Michael Rivera. I don't know Michael Rivera, but tomorrow I'm elected to the position, and whatever Michael Rivera wants to talk to me tomorrow, I would talk to him. I would listen to him. I just, I'm not. I don't have nothing against nobody. I really don't have nothing, and I didn't get involved in this thing, and I don't. I really haven't looked into it.
Let's see. This next one is there are concerns among members that Rick Rock has made offensive and racially insensitive comments publicly, and that leadership figures like James Henry, Charlie Miller have not addressed or condemned that behavior. As a Latino member of the NALC, how do you respond to those concerns, and what would you do to ensure accountability and respect within the union?
Well, first, I don't tolerate. I will not. I don't. I haven't heard. I don't follow podcasts. I know Rick Rock has a podcast. You make a derogatory statement, whether it was Latino, racist, female. I won't tolerate. That's one thing I do not tolerate. I won't. I have 4 daughters. So anything against a female, it's personal. I don't tolerate it. I won't do that. In our branch, we don't tolerate that hurt. So that's one thing that we won't. I would address it right away. That would be my concern. That's the way I would handle it.
Okay. Yeah, I think most of you guys don't listen to podcasts, and that makes sense because you're busy doing the things you need to do.
Well, again, I still got a branch that I run.
Yep.
And I just did arbitration on the 15th of this month. Then 3 days later, I had to leave to Puerto Rico for the COP. I came back. I'm preparing already for arbitration this month coming up again. I have a closing brief that I got to do by May 2nd by May 2nd. So, there's just this morning, I'm getting issues that are occurring at my station. And, I'm constantly always on the move.
Now, what do you think about this undelivered mail issue that's been happening across the country?
Well, what I think about it, that's just a way for the post office management to destroy us, to show that there's nothing for us to do and just get rid of letter carriers. The post office, the United States Post Office is a great organization. The idiots that are running the post office is the problem.
Yep.
And if anyone gets offended because I call them idiots, they are idiots. The ones that are running the United States Postal Service are the ones that are destroying the post office. They all have these bright ideas. They all have this. They sit down in a room and huddle to figure out how they're going to destroy the post office every day.
Yeah, I think in fact this is just my opinion, and I just want to insert this in here, but I personally think that there's conflict of interest laws being violated here because over in my area, I'm not sure how it works, and it's not happening everywhere, but it is happening in a lot of places where, they got that pay for performance, and I think one of the goals that they want to meet is no penalty or less overtime. And where I'm at, they're getting paid these pay for performance bonuses or whatever you want to call them. I don't care what you want to call them. It's more
Yeah,
money,
small.
and it's at the expense of the customer. So they're using their position to financially gain at the expense of the patrons. It's disloyal to the United States, to be honest.
Of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I listen, and again, this is my opinion. Article 8, there was never nothing wrong with Article 8. Why was it changed?
Yeah.
Why was it changed? Okay. This is why I think certain people up above sitting at the higher table on both sides decided to change Article 8 to bankrupt the post office. Because if you think about it, the carriers are not stupid. Carriers are real smart. Our carriers are real smart. I work over 12 hours. I'm going to make more money. Last year alone, I had one of my carriers make $183,000.
Oh,
That
wow.
was what he made. My carriers in Brooklyn, I'm not talking about Staten Island, in Brooklyn, six figures, 150, 140, 130. My top guy in Brooklyn made $183,000. Why? Because they found a way for a loophole. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. I ain't blaming them. I'm not blaming them. I'm blaming the people that created this new Article 8. What was wrong with Article 8 before?
Yeah.
There
I
was
don't think
nothing wrong.
anything wrong with, I liked it. Other than equitability, I like it.
Exactly. The only one thing I didn't like, especially when the DRT came up with that, okay, it wasn't equal, give them the opportunity at the next quarter. You know that was never going to be complied.
Yep, exactly.
So that's the only thing I just dislike about Article 8 when the DRT came up with this. You know it was never going to be complied. How is it that they can't equalize the list this quarter? They're going to equalize the list next quarter, plus give them an opportunity from the previous quarter.
Not going to happen.
That's the only
Yeah.
thing. If there was anything that we were going to change, that was the only thing I think that we should have changed.
Yep. All right. So good news. This is going to be short and sweet. We only got two more questions for you. What is your favorite food specific to where you come from? And I guess you could answer both New York and Puerto Rico since you said that you're from there as well, right?
Yes. So in New York, the best food besides pizza, we do listen, no hard feelings. We do have the best pizza in Brooklyn. And breakfast is bacon, egg, and cheese on a roll.
Okay.
That's-
That sounds good.
Yep.
What about Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico, to me, it's pernil, ajo con gandules, and pasteles. I'm an old school guy. I love my rice and beans. So if I could eat it every day, I would eat it every day. Pernil is pork.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pork. We roast it, which is the pork shoulder. We roast it in a certain way. It's just amazing. It's just like heaven in your mouth.
Now it's funny you mentioned the pizza because I'm more of I like the thick pizza. The thicker the better. Isn't it thin in New York?
No, it's thin pizza. We normally have the thin pizza. But I haven't ran into no locations that do the thick pizza.
Yeah, I like deep dish the best
Yeah,
myself.
I know. I did when we were in Chicago. I did do a deep dish pizza. It was good.
But
But
you still stand by the New York one.
it's the sauce. It's the
Okay.
sauce. The sauce. The sauce is what makes the pizza. It's the
Yeah,
sauce.
I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Now,
Because some sorts are bitter, some sorts are sweet. It has to be like, and I'll put them up there. L&B Spumoni Gardens in Brooklyn, Gravesend, Brooklyn. It's the best.
yeah, one day I got to visit and check it out.
Whenever you want. Doors are open for you, brother. My branch 41 is open whenever you want to come by.
Thanks. One last question, and this is the same question I ask in any investigative interview, just to make it objective. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Uh, what I would like to add is that we have to stay focused on the goal, and the goal is what's the best interest for our membership. And when we sidetrack that and we forget about that, then we lose everything else. We just have to stay on the line for our membership, and don't be afraid to stand up. Whether it's against anyone, don't be afraid to stand up and speak your mind. Whether they like it or not, speak your mind. That's all I have to say, brother.
Well, it was good having you on, and I just want to mention something before we let you go. Something for you and the listeners to understand. When I did submit for questions for the listeners to submit questions to be asked to you, I have to admit it's the first time I've gotten it, but I've had several individuals message me, not a question, but that they thought you were the gold standard of a president in terms of being a branch president, and that they hope that the interview went well because you are a very good individual that they highly recommend. I don't normally get recommendations when I ask for questions, so I think that's commendable and good to understand that maybe you're an individual that has high integrity for all I care. I think that's something to note for sure. But
thank you. That means a lot to me, brother. That really does mean a lot to me, brother. You just gave me chills by just telling me that, man. It really means a lot.
Well, it was good having you on, man.
All right. And listen, anytime you need anything, you got my phone. And anytime you come to Brooklyn, you got a home.
Thanks.
Okay,
I
brother?
appreciate it. Yep.
Okay. All right.
You have a good day.
If these guys are getting educated, we will be in big trouble.
Management's been weighing you down like a bag of wet catalogs, but you don't gotta take it. You strap on the elbow of education, dig it?
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Roseville Wrecking Ball. The Roseville Wrecking Ball.
The Roseville Wrecking Ball. He is an Article 8 scholar, and thank God. We need Article 8 scholars right now. The grievous genius, the Roseville Wrecking Ball, doing amazing work.
Tune into the Parcels of Knowledge podcast while you're on the route. That's the mailman's playbook, brother.